According to the philosopher Plutarch, the Egyptian philosophy is veiled in myths and in words containing dim reflections and adumbrations of the truth. The fact that their theology contains an enigmatic wisdom is indicated by the Sphinx placed before their shrines. Reportedly, Plutarch visited Egypt like Plato and Pythagoras, but we don't know for how long and how much he learned there by actual experience. In this video, I explore what Plutarch knew about Egyptian lore and how he interpreted it in his book on Isis and Osiris. The question of interpretation is important because Plutarch did not accept the idea that Egyptian lore is mindless drivel spun like a web of fiction. Nor did he acknowledge that the stories were tabloid versions of ancient history, such that the gods were really ancient kings and queens experiencing passions and betrayals, as in the Game of Thrones. No, Plutarch believed in the truth of ancient myth, that the sometimes crude and offensive stories contain signs, symbols, and ciphers of truth, which is the greatest gift the gods have ever given us. I'm Dr. David Litwa, and if you enjoy free scholarly content, I hope that you'll subscribe to this channel, check out my published books, and join my online school, the Gnosis Academy, where you'll find lots of courses in the field of Gnostic and Hermetic studies, the New Testament, and early Christianity. If you want summaries of scholarly literature, you can sign up for free on my website, the Gnostic Archive. All links are in the description. It is the case that Plutarch somewhat whitewashed what he knew of the story of Isis and Osiris, but this was only when the myth seemed too violent and incredible. In general, Plutarch was faithful to relate the story, since he believed that it embodied divine truths, and even when he rejected an aspect of the story, he still stated what he threw out. So in what follows, I won't be using solely native Egyptian names for the gods, but the Greek names which Plutarch used. Even though this is an Egyptian story, I'm going to give you the variant told by Plutarch in Isis and Osiris. In short, Hermes and Rhea produced 5 gods on the 5 intercalary days of the Egyptian calendar. These gods are Osiris, Aruaris, or the elder Horus, Typhon, Isis, and Nephthys. Osiris and Isis were star-crossed lovers. They were sexually united even in the womb. Nephthys became the wife of Typhon. Osiris had intercourse with Nephthys, thinking that she was Isis. Nephthys exposed the child due to her fear of Typhon, but Isis rescued and raised it. This child was called Anubis, the protector of the gods. It was Osiris who introduced agriculture, laws, and rites of worship, not only in Egypt, but throughout the entire world. It was due to this civilizing mission that Osiris was identified with the Greek god Dionysus. Dionysus was also a world traveler, and he gave the gift of viticulture before returning to his native Greece. Osiris was lord of life, and this life was manifest in his ability to cultivate grain and other fruits from the earth. Back in Egypt, Typhon plotted to kill Osiris with 72 conspirators. He built a large and beautiful chest, which exactly fit the height of Osiris. At a dinner party, Typhon said that he would give the chest to the person it exactly fit. When Osiris climbed in, the conspirators nailed it down and soldered it shut. They threw it into the Nile, and the body of Osiris was drowned. But even as Osiris died, that body didn't lose the energies of life. It floated all the way to the shores of Byblos, an ancient city on the coast of what is now Lebanon. There, a strong and thick tree grew around the casket. The local king then cut down the tree to make a pillar in his palace. Isis discovered the pillar and became the nurse of the king's children. She would have made these children immortal, but the queen screamed when she discovered Isis burning off the child's mortality in the hearth. Isis then reveals her identity and demands the pillar. When she cuts out the body of her husband, she mourns with such a wail that one of the queen's sons dies on the spot. The other son went on a journey with Isis back to Egypt. He too died when he too curiously crept up behind Isis, who was looking mournfully into the face of her husband. One look of wrath, and the child expired immediately. Plutarch doesn't accept the story that this boy drowned when he reached out for onions and accidentally fell out of the boat. Back in Egypt, Typhon discovered the chest holding Osiris's body once again. He proceeded to cut up the body into 14 or alternatively 42 parts. Isis found all of these body parts except the penis, which Typhon had thrown into the Nile. There it was eaten by certain types of fish. This explains why certain Egyptians, notably those at Oxyrhynchus, don't eat particular kind of fish. The body parts of Osiris were buried in various regions or nomes of Egypt, and that is why so many cities claim to have the tomb of Osiris. Osiris, despite the fact that he had to be sewn up in the manner of Frankenstein, and despite the fact that his penis was a prosthesis added by Isis, was still the Lord of life. Isis lay with him and conceived Horus. Osiris came to Horus even from Hades and taught him the arts of war and self-discipline. Thus, when Horus came of age, he defeated Typhon and put him in chains. When Isis released Typhon, Horus cut off his own mother's head. Plutarch does not accept this part of the story, claiming only that he threw away her crown. Typhon then took Horus to court, claiming that he was an illegitimate child. But Horus's paternity was confirmed by Hermes Thoth, whom Plutarch identifies as reason or the Logos. Horus then defeated Typhon in 2 other battles. Apparently, a second time, Osiris consorted with his wife Isis, who gave birth to Harpocrates, also known as Horus the Child. This is the gist of Plutarch's tale. For all the other details, I encourage everyone to go read his book on Isis and Osiris. It has 2 good commentaries, one in German by Theodor Hopfner and one in English by J. Gwyn Griffiths. In fact, if you find a copy of Griffiths, send it to me because it's very rare and out of print. In my analysis, I want to focus mainly on Plutarch's strategy of interpreting this story and to show how it relates to Plutarch's interpretation of other Egyptian rites, stories, and symbols. On the level of physical explanation, so dear to the Stoics, Plutarch accepted the idea that Isis represents fertile earth, while Osiris represents fertilizing water. The water of the Nile was called the semen of Osiris. He is Lord of generation, and his phallus represents that generative power. Indeed, the phallus of Osiris was paraded through the streets in a festival called the Pamilia. The locking of Osiris into a chest represents the disappearance of water or the receding of the Nile. Typhon, in turn, represents what is dry, barren, and infertile. He is the power of drought. His color red is the color of the Egyptian desert, the barren sand. The battle between Typhon and Osiris, including Horus, represents the continual opposition of two earthly forces, somewhat like yin and yang. These two opposing forces are the forces of death and life, love and hate, good and evil. They are spoken of by a number of religious and philosophical groups. Plutarch lists the Zoroastrians, the Pythagoreans, Empedocles, and Plato, for example. The world is a balance between opposing forces, and that is why Isis does not allow Typhon simply to be annihilated by Horus. The wet needs the dry. In nature, life needs death to renew itself. The energy of chaos cannot be totally cut off. It must rather be ordered and controlled. The good and life-giving force is predominant, and it will triumph. In the soul, reason and mind represent Osiris. In the realm of nature, Osiris is represented by ordered, established, and healthy ecosystems, temperate climates, and fertile fields. Typhon is that part of the soul which is subject to violent emotion. He is the impulsive, the irrational part of the soul. In the body, he is disease, while in nature, he is the storm. His animals are the most savage and wild, the crocodile and the hippopotamus. At Hermopolis in Egypt, Plutarch could point out a statue of Typhon in the form of a hippo on whose back was poised a hawk fighting with a serpent. The hawk was the power of Horus, the order dominating chaos. For Egyptians, any incidents that are harmful could be called the deeds and movements of Typhon. Everywhere in Egypt, Plutarch says, were statues of Osiris in ithyphallic form, that is, with an erect penis on account of his creative and fostering power. And they clothed these statues in a flame-colored garment, since Egyptians regard the body of the sun as a visible manifestation of Osiris's good and creative power. The light and fire of the sun is not destructive, but life-generating. Isis is the female principle of nature and is receptive of every form of generation. She is the gentle nurse, says Plutarch, and she is called by countless names because she can turn into many things, being receptive to all kinds of form scattered within her. She has an innate love for the first and most powerful principle, the good, and she brings together and manifests all the forms of the good, which are split up and fractured in nature. Plutarch clarifies that he does not think that the physical interpretation of the Egyptian gods is ultimately correct. It's not right, in other words, or it's too simplistic to believe that water or the sun or earth or sky is Osiris or Isis, or that drought or the salty sea is Typhon. The gods rather represent more abstract powers that Plutarch called daimonic. In Typhon's case, he is the daimonic power of violence and disorder, excess and defect. For Osiris, he is the power of order, good, and benefit. And it is because Osiris and Isis are wholly good that they transform from daimones into gods. The divine name of Osiris is Serapis. The fact that everything is to be referred to reason and the mind can be inferred from the Egyptians themselves. For on the 19th day of the first month, a month the Egyptians called Thoth, they held a festival in honor of Hermes Thoth, and in this festival they ate honey and a fig, and as they ate, they said, "Truth is sweet." Plutarch himself was a sleuth in the hunt for truth. He did not reject Egyptian religion and lore as superstition or fiction, nor did he believe that gods could literally be changed and chopped. Instead, he found a middle path. To be sure, Plutarch was no Egyptologist, but he did preserve Egyptian lore for Greeks, and he found a way to translate this lore in a way that I think is honorable to the ancient Egyptians themselves. Hello, friends. Over the past 20 years, I've studied the spiritual mysteries of the ancient world, and I've come to the conclusion that many of our deepest spiritual insights in the West ultimately come from one place, the land of the Nile. The greatest and arguably the earliest Christian mystagogues and theologians were all from Alexandria. I speak of Valentinus, Basilides, Carpocrates, the Nicene preacher, among others. I've devoted the last 10 years of my life to studying these specific texts and figures, often written off as Gnostic. But to me, Gnostic is a badge of honor. These are my own personal spiritual guides, for they followed in the path of Hermes and Christ, two beings, but the same Logos speaking through time and space. I want to welcome you to join me for a transformative journey through the heart of Gnostic and Hermetic Egypt this November 4th through 12th, 2025. I call the trip Gnostic Egypt, Alexandria, and beyond. If you're interested in going, be sure to join the open house session this Sunday, August 3rd at 3 p.m. Eastern to learn more and pose questions to me and to the tour company itself. Our link to meet is in the description and is pinned in the chat. For now, let me tell you more about this trip. This is a 9-day, 8-night immersive educational tour featuring on-site lectures in places where Hermetic philosophy and early Christianity were born. You will visit the great sites. You will enter the pyramids of Giza, wonder at the brand new Grand Egyptian Museum, and go into the Saqqara necropolis. But you'll also venture off the beaten path to Alexandria and Hermopolis, the spiritual centers of Hermetic and Gnostic wisdom. Are you interested in Hermetic wisdom? I've literally wrote the book on the Hermetica, Hermetica 1 and 2, which contain every single text of the ancient philosophic Hermetica, originally in Coptic and Greek. I've taught seminars on the Hermetica both online and in the classroom, but nothing replaces learning Hermetic wisdom in the city of Hermes itself, namely Hermopolis, where the priests of Hermes died and are buried. In Hermopolis, we'll explore the underground catacombs, the subterranean sanctuary of Thoth, and the tombs of Isidora and Osiris. I'm also a leading authority on the origins of Christianity in Alexandria, due in large part to my book, Early Christianity in Alexandria. Alexandria wasn't just the cradle of Hermetic thought. It was likely the birthplace of Christian metaphysics. Alexandria gave rise to towering spiritual figures like Philo, Valentinus, Basilides, and Clement, and, as I think, the Gospels of Thomas and John. Learn why I think so in my on-site classroom, where I'll be sharing my latest insights and research. At Alexandria, you'll see the site of the ancient lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the world. You'll visit the site of the ancient Serapeum, destroyed by Christians, and you will explore underground catacombs. We'll also visit Kom El Dika, an archaeological site with real ancient classrooms and an amphitheater telling us much about the process of ancient education and philosophy. The catacombs and necropolis of Shakti and Kom El Shokofa will take us back in time when Greek culture met with Egyptian culture in a vast melting pot, giving birth not just to new styles of dress and hair, but to new modes of spirituality. Perhaps you're interested in that Jewish mystical group called the Therapeutai. Philo tells us a great deal about this group, who met on the shores of Lake Mareotis. We'll be visiting a site on this lake, Taposiris Magna, which will give us a good idea of how an ancient mystical and ascetic group lived on the outskirts of the great metropolis. Are you interested in Nag Hammadi and Coptic literature more broadly? We'll be getting exclusive access to the Coptic Museum with guidance from our personal Egyptologist. Here we will see one or more of the Nag Hammadi codices, as well as a full array of other Coptic literature. We'll also visit ancient Babylon, namely the fortress called Babylon, that is, in the heart of Old Cairo. According to 1 Peter 5:13, the author, called Peter and his son Mark, write their letter from Babylon. Did they mean Babylon in Egypt? Find out. Throughout the tour, I'll be accompanied by our own personal Egyptologist who will help me discuss the mysteries of hieroglyphics, animal worship, the symbol of the pyramid, and the mysteries of the Sphinx, which we will see up close and personal. You can take a ride on a camel or simply enjoy a cup of Turkish coffee as you gaze at the Giza Plateau. We'll also visit the Saqqara necropolis, its underground galleries known as the Serapeum, and the step pyramid of Djoser and Unas. We'll go deep in the belly of this pyramid and view the pyramid texts, arguably the oldest religious texts in the history of antiquity, dating back to around 2475 BCE. We'll also see the Old Kingdom tombs of Majorca, Ptahhotep, Kajemni, and the site of the early Christian monastery Deir Abat Yaramiya. Traveling down the Nile, we'll visit the small village of Beni Hassan, where an important group of rock-cut tombs are carved into the high limestone cliffs on the east bank of the Nile. These tombs date mostly to the dynasties 11 and 12, although there are a few smaller and less elaborate ones belonging to dynasty 6. The tombs are reached via a flight of stone steps up the hillside, from where we will behold, with a magnificent view, the Nile River Valley. We'll also visit Amarna, the ancient Egyptian city of the sun, established by the so-called monotheist pharaoh Akhenaten and his royal wife Nefertiti, in order to bring to life his vision of a society dedicated to the cult worship of the Aten, or sun disk. This capital city was built on a previously undeveloped area under the pharaoh's direction in only a few short years, and was abandoned almost as quickly shortly after his death around 1336 BCE. Here you'll behold the rarely seen tomb of Akhenaten himself, his vizier's unique cliffside tombs, and the remains of the royal palace and the large and small Aten temples. If you're like me, you're also a museum lover. And in addition to the Coptic Museum, we'll be visiting the Greco-Roman Museum in Alexandria, but don't get lost in the buzzing crowds. I'll be there to point out to you the mysteries of several artifacts whose significance you might have otherwise missed and quickly passed over. My friends, this is not just an educational tour. It's an initiation with daily lectures and group discussions with like-minded people. Here's a list of what's included. Daily lectures and group discussions with myself, additional cameo lectures throughout, a PDF reader and reference guide of ancient texts and modern texts that I will compile for you. You'll be personally met and greeted at the airport for both your arrival and departure. You'll be picked up with a private transfer from Cairo Airport and bused to the hotel. You'll have private transfer from Middle Egypt to the terminal of international departure in Cairo at the conclusion of the journey. And all your travel, tours, and transfers are by a modern air-conditioned bus. You'll also get 8 nights and 9 days of double accommodation in luxury hotels, 4 or 5 stars, as well as a boutique retreat center in Hermopolis. You'll have a personal English-speaking Egyptologist throughout, and myself, obviously, as your tour leader. You will have included all sightseeing tickets and permissions, which are difficult to get. And you'll also obviously have all your meals, starting with dinner on day 1, concluding with breakfast on day 9. That's 8 breakfasts, 7 lunches, and 8 dinners at luxury restaurants. Also included are your entry visas, all the tips and gratuities you won't need to worry about, and unlimited water on the tour bus. You'll also get personal headsets for the duration of the tour. And I need not mention all the fabulous views, the markets, the cultural activities, and the shopping experiences. Do not miss this chance to walk the sacred path where Western spirituality was born. And please don't wait. You know that the world is uncertain, and I may never offer this experience again. If you register early before August 25th, you'll receive $500 off. And believe me, this trip isn't going to get cheaper next year or the year after. So don't delay your destiny. It's a fair chunk of change, I know, but invest in your dreams, in what you find personally and existentially important. If it's worth it to you, the universe will find you a way. Start a GoFundMe. Tell friends and family.
Spread the word abroad far and wide. But most importantly, reserve your place today.